Hey, what's up, everybody? Going live. Always fun to talk to the people live. Let's get the chat going as soon as we possibly can. No, some people will be trickling in. I know it's 5 o'clock. It's a weird time, but hey, this is what worked for me. So wanted to talk to the people today and everything like that. Wanted to hear y'all's thoughts. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I am going to share this on social media, so excuse me real quick. Y'all should do the same if you haven't already. Go share it on social media. I'll give you a shout out if you share it on social media. Just tag me over on Twitter at RCMB323. Be sure to do that. And yeah, let's have some fun today. Talk Texas Tech basketball. There's quite a bit to talk about as well. So let me get this out here real quick. Drop your questions in the chat. I'm going to go share this to get even more people in here, get as many people as we possibly can talking about Texas Tech men's basketball. And really, I'm going to try and answer all your questions. Main points I'm going to hit today are the portal closing in terms of immediate eligibility for guys. So you won't hear a lot about that anymore. And if you do see a guy enter the portal here in the next couple of days, I bet it was he actually entered it a little early and it's just now coming out. But if you see somebody entering the portal next Monday, yeah, they're probably sitting out. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of guys like that, if I'm being completely honest. But yeah, like the video, drop your comments, your questions in the chat, and we're going to get this thing going once I get it out on social media real quick for everybody to see and whatnot. So, yeah, I think really the biggest thing for me, what we're going to talk about and what I'm most interested to hear y'all's thoughts are, it's really the potential coaches and everything like that. But also, I'm really excited to talk about the guards on this team. It's a very guard-heavy team. Obviously, we know that everybody's been pressing me about when are they going to get a big RC? When are they going to get a big? It's like, I don't know. I'm not on the coaching staff, but I can tell you guys in terms of who I've heard them potentially going after, who I'd like to see them go after, and what I've heard on that front. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Let me just get two more of these out here. I'm putting them on Facebook, everybody. I promise I will be with all of y'all in just a second. I promise wholeheartedly. I already see a name in the chat that is going to be fun to discuss from Justin right there. He will be brought up a little bit later on. And I'll tell you this, I think from a realistic standpoint, his now former teammate will probably be the guy that is a little bit, I guess, more possible to get is probably the way to go about it. But let's jump into it. Okay. Because again, throughout this whole time, drop your comments in here. I promise I will answer them. Like the video, share it. I'll give you a shout out if you tag me over on Twitter. But let's jump into it in terms of what we know right now that's going on with Texas Tech men's basketball. And we'll start with the latest when it comes to Kashad Johnson, the guy that played the national championship game just over a little bit of a month ago with the Aztecs of San Diego State. Now, if you haven't watched the previous videos on the channel, I'll keep you informed here. He was supposed to be visiting Texas Tech here really last weekend or early this week, right? That did not happen. Instead, he went to Tucson, Arizona and visited with Wildcats. And now he's visiting, well, the other Wildcats in his top five, and that is the Kentucky Wildcats. Travis Branham from 247 Sports reported on that early Sunday that he would instead not go to Texas Tech. Instead, he would go to Lexington for a midweek visit, and that's currently where Johnson is. If you ask for my true opinion on it, it's not going to happen. I don't think Johnson comes to Texas Tech. In fact, if I was a betting man, which I am, but I won't bet on this, I do think he probably ends up at Kentucky. I really can't blame him for that. Coach Cal's got a pretty good track record of getting guys to the league, specifically with his build and game-wise. So would be interesting to follow that. No, he's been a high priority target for Texas Tech, but in my opinion, as it sits right now, I don't see it happening. As we know, the portal can change quickly, but I just don't see it happening. And I want to get something out of the way in terms of confusion real quick, because I know I just said that the portal closes, right, today. That is for immediate eligibility. As long as your name is in the portal before midnight tonight, I believe is the time that it cuts off, you are eligible to play next season. Now, if you put your name in the portal, let's say on Saturday, you do not have eligibility for next season. Now, some guys are going to need a waiver. Some of them are immediately eligible if it's their first time transferring. But that's how that works, okay? And so, again, that's kind of where we're at on Kashad Johnson. Now, the name that a lot of people are questioning and wondering about right now in terms of, is Texas Tech in a good position to land them? And I'd say relatively yes, is Warren Washington. Everybody's been asking me on Twitter about him, sending me DMs and everything. And to his credit, Warren has kept his recruitment pretty quiet, if we're being honest about it. And I think when it comes down to it, you're going to see him probably announce here relatively soon. What does that look like? I don't know. Everybody changes their minds. But I would be surprised at this point, if you ask me, if it's not TCU or Texas Tech. That is kind of what I'm getting. And from what I've heard, it's probably a lean towards TCU, which is a bit surprising to me considering that they just landed the Florida Gulf Coast Center. And I'm not sure how that would work out with them. But I do think that there is still potential for Warren Washington to end up on Texas Tech campus. Now, that being said, again, I give that lean towards TCU right now. And maybe that comes out here while we're doing this live. I don't know. But I do think that that's probably where it is right now. I want to give a couple shout outs real quick. Justin, yo, what's up, RC? How you doing, Justin? Dizzy, RC, my man. Lawrence, appreciate the hat comment. Yeah, go Stars tonight. Debating on buying last-second tickets for myself since my fiance is going to see a Magic Mike event. She got invited out for one of her blogs that she runs, and it is what it is. You know, Magic Mike, Channing Tatum's there. I can't blame her. He's a good-looking dude. This from Dizzy. Are you happy with our ability to compete in the Big 12 at the guard position with who we currently have? Strictly at the guard position, yeah. Now, I think that's all relative, right? Like, what is your definition of competing, right? Do I think that Texas Tech has a top 3 or 4 backcourt in the Big 12? Probably not. But I do think they can compete night in and night out. The question I have right now for this team more than anything is this, and this is not supposed to be a diss towards any of the other guys on the roster, but outside of Pop, I don't know if I would classify anybody as a dude. And what I mean by that is a guy that can go get you a bucket in crunch time, that's proven it at a high level. And even Pop to some degree hasn't proven that. But he was also all Big 12 freshman team. He's one of the best players returning in the Big 12. I expect him to make a jump. Now, the thing is with Pop, the jump may be relative because you have to have guys around him that won't allow defenses to just hone in on him, right? And so that's one thing there. I love Lamar coming back after much speculation, and that's a story in and of itself when it comes down to it. But I like Lamar, and don't be surprised, I think, and this is just me thinking about what Grant McCaslin ran at UNT, what they kind of like doing. I would not be surprised if you see lineups that include all 3 of those guards in terms of Pop, Chance, and Lamar, right? I wouldn't be surprised because I think Lamar can hold his own against wings in this league. He's a beefier guard, 6'4", 205, 210 in that range, right? I think he can hold his own. That being said, I don't know how often it will be run, but I do like it in terms of Lamar actually being the primary ball handler when that action is set and that scheme is out on the floor, because it allows Pop and Chance to basically, and again, I'm not comparing these guys to them, but do what Curry and Clay do with the Golden State Warriors. Run a lot of action baseline, use screens, get to spots, create space for more opportunities for a better look from deep, right? And those guys are really good shooters. Chance shot 44.3% from 3. He was one of the highest guys in the portal this past year, this cycle, I should say, when it comes to shooting from deep. 44.3%. That'll play. And he was better off the catch and shoot as well. Damn near 50%. I believe it was 47.8. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was in that range, right? Pop shot 38% as a true fresh conference in America when he was asked to do damn near everything, right? And I think when it comes down to it, you're going to have better spacing on this team. That is one thing that I think Grant McCaslin does a better job of, at least offensively, than Mark Adams. And now, what does that look like in terms of the big aspect of it? I think that's vitally important. You got to go get a couple of guys on this team. Like, your best big at this point is Robert Jennings, right? Because crazy enough, Kieran Lindsey, he's listed as a guard on the Texas Tech website. Do I believe that? No, I don't think he's a guard, but he's 6'8". He's kind of that tweener guy that is just uber athletic, in my opinion. Really knows how to use his size and his feet really well. Not a guy that I love shooting from deep, but you could see a lineup where I think one of the most interesting lineups as it stands right now for Texas Tech, and by no means is this roster done, as we all know. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this roster here later on in the live show. But I think the most interesting lineup right now that I would want to see on the floor, just to see how it looks for Texas Tech, would be Pop, Chance, Lamar, Darion Williams, and then Lindsey at the 5. Okay. And I think you could just stretch teams out. You could run and gun with them. You could have Williams and Lindsey crash the boards, and you could get Pop out in space, Chance out in space, and Lamar, because all of them can run the point, right? So it doesn't matter who gets the ball in transition. As soon as they get it, go. And it's kind of the same thing for Darion Williams, too. He's really good in transition, right? The only guy that you don't feel great about in terms of being the primary ball handler with that lineup on the floor is Lindsey, right? And so when you look at it, I'm interested to see what they do with the remaining 3 spots in terms of scholarships on this roster right now. That is including Jason Jackson, who we'll talk about a little bit later. But right now, I kind of like it in terms of if they go get bigs and wings, I think they'll be solid. But that's a big if right now in terms of the portal. So got to ask you, hit that like button if you're liking what you're hearing. Go share the channel with your friends. Really appreciate all y'all right here at 5 o'clock. It does not feel like 5 o'clock. I am so old. I am so glad I drank some coffee like an hour ago. That was a great decision on my part. This from Justin. Ernest Yuta. Well, let's jump into it. Why don't we? There's 2 names right now in the portal that I think Texas Tech needs to go after. And I want to preface this. This is me talking. This is not me saying, hey, Texas Tech has been in contact with them as of right now, but I think Texas Tech and damn near every team in the country should go after them, and one of them is close to home. Now, let's start with Ernest Yuta. He is from Kansas, 6'10" center, originally from Orlando, Florida, former McDonald's All-American. Kansas had 2 big guys go in the portal after they get Hunter Dickinson. Makes a lot of sense. They already got Adams up there as well, so they don't really need a lot of depth when it comes to big men, and they're bringing one in as a true freshman, right? I like Ernest quite a bit. He is, in my opinion, if you could tell me right now of guys in the portal who I think would fit absolutely seamlessly in a Grant McCaslin system, it's him. Period. End of story. He's a really good screener. He's a really good lob threat. He finishes around the basket. He's not afraid to get physical with you and really use his size, right? I really like him. But being realistic, I'm not sure that he ends up at Texas Tech. I'm not sure. Now, a guy that I think, because of his ties to the Lone Star State, might have a better opportunity to come to Texas Tech. And again, I'm not saying they've reached out, even though I think they should or they will eventually, right, is Zuby Ejiofor, okay? And he's 6'8", forward from Kansas, originally from Garland, Texas. Athletic, big, can guard 1 through 5. He is one of the most interesting bigs that I've seen tape-wise, and I'll break his film down a little bit more in a video tomorrow, but I wanted to bring up his name on the live today. He's one of the more interesting bigs when it comes to transition. I really like what I see from him there. Former 4-star recruit, as I mentioned, from DFW, class of 2022. I think that's a guy out of the 2 Kansas bigs that are transferring that has a much better chance, albeit I don't know how big of a chance, to come to Texas Tech because of his ties to DFW and potentially wanting to stay in arguably the best conference in America and then coming back close to home as well. But I really, really like Zuby. quite a bit. But it's early in their process. They literally went in the portal today, people. So I don't know exactly how many teams are going after them. If I'm a team in America, bet your ass I'm going after them. But that's just me. All right. That boy D, I'm actually excited to see what our basketball program will look like. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, man, where I get the excitement, but I also get the frustration aspect of it. I think there's peaks and valleys when it comes to being a fan. Um, and I'm in an interesting spot where it's like, obviously, I want the Red Raiders to succeed, but also there's this non bias aspect of it. But I also graduated from the school twice. So y'all can see the conundrum. But I think from a standpoint of looking at the current roster, I really like the guards. But they got to go out and they got to get some wings, man. They got to go get a center. They got to go get a big. Um, they have to get that. They got to get at least one more dude, and I'm not exactly sure where that comes in. Especially with the dead period now, you can't go travel and recruit these guys. Obviously, you can have them in on official visits and stuff here, but we're getting to the nitty gritty time where you want to have these guys on campus. Because listen, hey, summer classes start in the not too distant future, about 2-3 weeks away. And you want to have those guys on campus in the workout program, but more importantly, going through classes as well. So they don't have to take as many classes during, fall and spring semester, and they can remain eligible and everything. So that's what I'm most interested in, to see how quickly this happens. But another aspect that I'm most interested in terms of seeing how quickly it happens, is the coaching aspect of things. Just because, again, you got 3 guys trying to do a 6 crew job, and that's just a little frustrating, I bet, from every point involved, and probably difficult if we're being fully transparent about it, for Grant McCaslin and everything like that, and AC and Matt as well. But it is what it is. Again, like the video if you haven't already. I'll give you guys a shout out if y'all share it on social media. Just tag me at RCMB on Twitter, or RCMB323 on Twitter. And let's get those questions going in the chat right here. I'll start answering rapid fire if y'all get them in here, in terms of what y'all want to know about this program right now, and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. I'm not going to give you no bullshit. If I don't know it, I don't know it. But if I do know something, I'll tell you guys wholeheartedly and the truth about it. This from Big Bing fan. Go Rangers. Hell yeah, man. They're on fire right now. I will admit, though, I'm kind of a wishy-washy Ranger fan. They really pissed me off during that rebuild. Some of their picks, obviously not the Josh Young one, but they really pissed me off. But hey, they're back at it. Love to see it right down the road for me here in downtown. Love going to the Ranger games. And I think for anybody that's in Dallas-Fort Worth, I believe it's on the 17th next week. It is Josh Young bobblehead night at the ballpark. It's also Texas Tech night at the ballpark. Okay, so you got to buy a ticket associated with Texas Tech, and then you get a Josh Young Ranger Texas Tech bobblehead. As of right now, the fiance and I will be there. Let me know if y'all will be there as well. Should be a lot of fun. This from Big Bing again. When coaching high school ball on DFW, I constantly use the high-low. Always have a guy last year like KO who roams the baseline. And anytime penetration occurs down the lane, the ball gets to the high post, bam. Yeah, that'll be Darion Williams or Lindsey this year. 100%. I think that's who that's going to be, especially if they get another big. I like Lindsey off the ball and not in the pick and roll setting, almost in a way where you're describing, where maybe not like KO, not as far as deep in the corner, but maybe close to it mid-range wise. And he just absolutely collapses when the big helps over after the screen, the high screen and roll, right? And let's just say it's Pop, and then Pop can just make the easy dump off pass right there to Lindsey as well. So I think that's kind of the guy you're talking about right there. And I think Darion Williams will as well. But I think also Tech is really going to stretch the floor next year, I think, with this personnel that they have. I'm interested to see how much they do it. And also the aspect of running the floor, transition. I think they have quite a few guys that I think benefit from a more up-tempo offense, which is interesting because, as we know, and one of the knocks for a lot of people when it came down to Grant McCaslin was just how damn slow that UNT offense was last year. All right, this from Adventure. I'm just going to say Mr. Jeff. I'm going to mess that up. Good morning. Nice to see a live video slash chat. Appreciate you tuning in, man. I know it's good morning from you. You're on the other side of the world. Don't judge him, people. It's morning. This guy knows time zones. He knows time. He knows time. Okay. This from Dizzy. What is the best case scenario for the rest of this offseason? How many more bigs and wings do we need to feel like a complete squad? Right now, Tech has 3 open scholarships if you include Jason Jackson, which I am because I think from everything I've heard, Jason Jackson is likely to come to Texas Tech as it stands right now. He was trying to get out of his national letter of intent, tried to gauge where he could go, didn't really like it, so he stayed in, it sounds like. Now, maybe things change on that, but that's what I heard late last week. Maybe things have changed, as we know that they change very quickly, but that's kind of the sense I get right now. For me, best case scenario for the rest of the offseason when it comes to the roster specifically, right? Let's go off of the point that they have 3 scholarships remaining. Every damn one of those scholarships needs to be used on a wing or a big, preferably 2 wings and 1 big. And I'm talking wings in terms of, hey, they're like 6'6" and above. You need a big that's at least 6'8" and bouncy. You got to go get some depth on that front line. And that's not a knock on RJ or Lindsey. But listen, those are really your only 2 bigs, right? Like Darion Williams, he'll play bigger than his size, but he's not a big. He's more of a guy that's, kind of that tweener type guy that can do a lot of different things. I think he shoots a little bit better. This, that, and the other, right? But you really only have 2 bigs. And the crazy part is the tallest guy on your team right now is Kyron Lindsey. He's 6'8", and he's listed as a guard, right? So it's like, okay, I don't mind having a 6'8" guy as your tallest guy. Perfect example was when they went to the Sweet 16 in year 1 of Mark Adams. The tallest guy on their roster was 6'9". It's cool, right? Well, technically that's not true. Daniel Bacho was on there, but a guy that was in the rotation, right? 6'9". That's the tallest guy they had. And so when I look at it, it's like, okay, you need to have at least a big coming off the bench where you can have that ability to throw a different look at a team. Or if a team is just dominating in the paint, at least you got a guy down there that worst case scenario can give you 5 fouls, right? You know what I mean? So you need a little bit of size. You need 2 wings, preferably ones from the wing department. I would love to see a beefier wing kind of to go along with Darion Williams, but also a guy that's just kind of like Stretch Armstrong, just long, lengthy, athletic. I think that that's really the 2 main points that I want to see most emphasized when it comes to finalizing this roster here in the next few weeks. And by the way, the roster doesn't have to be finalized here in the next few weeks. I just think that's the ideal time to do it because, again, you want to get these guys on campus. You want to get these guys going through summer classes, summer workouts, get that camaraderie going. You want to build all that culture, that atmosphere in the building, whatever it may be, right? You want to have that. So I think that that's really the timeline for me and really the guys that I'm looking at most. This from Brandon. Have you heard anything else about the Kentucky kid that's from Atlanta, Texas? Yeah, he's not coming to Tech, I don't think. Yeah. You know, it's one of those deals where I forget where his old coach is, but he has a coach that he could be following in the collegiate ranks. It'll be closer to home. His story, man, I feel for that kid. He's lost his grandpa and his dad in the past, I think, like year. I mean, it's brutal, man, in terms of what that guy has gone through. Yeah, just brutal type stuff. But I do think that it's one of those deals that I would be pretty surprised if Texas Tech gets him unless they hire his coach. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't ask who the coach is because I forgot where his college coach was, or one of his old AAU high school coaches is now in college near Texarkana, where Atlanta is over there. So kind of in that area. I just forget where he's at, to be honest with you. C Shiner 21, I will be there. Well, hey, let's meet up. I'll tweet out a link, or not tweet out a link, just tweet out where I am at the game when I get there. From Greg, any word on anyone really getting close to coming out of the portal? Greg, do you mean leaving Texas Tech or coming to Texas Tech? Just need some clarity on that. Dizzy, lots of potential, but also lots of questions on this roster. Who will take a step up because we currently don't have a dude, like you said, Pop Isaacs. Now, people are going to have to step up around Pop, but I think Pop has the potential to really, really take that next step to be a dude. I think that you could look at this point where, hey, he was hurt last year. I think he increases his shooting percentages. I think he mitigates some of the turnovers that he has. I think he's really that guy that's going to help really be that guy for Texas Tech. Now, what does that look like around him? I think that's the biggest question. You got to get some dudes around him. And I'm not saying they have to be as good as Pop, but they have to be good enough that the defense respects them, that the defense doesn't send two at Pop every time in the pick and roll, that they don't follow and hedge everything that Pop does so he can't get an open look, right? So you have to have a guy like that. And right now, again, I'm not sure who that is on the roster for Texas Tech. I like Chance, but that's a big jump from Grand Canyon to Tech. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to be a very serviceable player for Texas Tech. Lamar, I think he takes a jump. I think he's a little bit more consistent, right? When it comes down to it, I think he's going to improve. Lindsey, think he'll be good as well. Does he live up to that 4-star reputation that he had coming out of DFW, going to Georgia, now to Tech, right? Does Robert Jennings take that next step, which I think he does with more playing time, right? How does Darion Williams jump from, the Mountain West, where he was the freshman of the year, to arguably, again, the best conference in America, right? There's a lot of ifs on this team, but I think the one if that I think is the smallest, if you will, is Pop Isaacs. Pop is the guy. Pop was the most instrumental piece that Texas Tech could keep this offseason outside of Jalen Tyson. That's another story entirely. But you keep Pop. That's a big deal for Texas Tech. You have a good, solid foundation of youth here for Grant McCaslin to build upon. You got Pop, you got Lamar, you got Lindsey, then you got Robert Jennings. 4 returnees in that regard, and not to mention you got Kerwin coming back and Demarion Williams, not Darion. Demarion coming back. So you got 6 returnees as it stands right now. I guess there could be a last-second portal entry, but as from what I heard, hey, this is kind of what you're going to have right now if you're Texas Tech. Coming to Tech. Yeah, I think right now, Greg, to answer your question, any word on anyone really getting close to coming to the portal, to coming to Tech, I think the closest one right now in terms of having a final decision made is Warren Washington. I addressed that earlier where I said I think it's going to be between TCU and Texas Tech from everything I've heard. And really, I think right now it's probably I'd give a lean to TCU. Would not be shocked at all if he ends up in Fort Worth, if you ask me. Old Texas Tech man, any news on news coaches? No, but let's talk about that now. I think that's a good point, and we'll get to other questions here later on. Let me actually really real quick see if anybody shouted me out over on Twitter real quick. Greg, shout out to Greg. Appreciate you, my guy, for tuning in. And then we got Brandon as well. Give y'all a quick retweet real quick on that front. If you share it on social media, I'll give you a retweet. And be sure to like the video as well. But let's jump into the coaching staff aspect of this because I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and I kind of want to give my 2 cents on it. I'll say this to answer your question. I think when it comes down to the coaching staff, you're going to hear a lot more about it now. I think that is going to be much more of a priority now. Reason being is this. It is now a dead period for coaches. So I will be going with my buddy Tobias Bass to EYBL here in Dallas. Who Wants Smoke? Those are some of the biggest high school tournaments in the country, right? We'll be going actually tomorrow and Saturday here in Dallas. And coaches are not allowed there because it is a dead period. A dead period means they can't go out on the road, and recruit, but they can recruit from back in Lubbock. The reason being why I think coaching news picks up in terms of who the assistants are going to be on the staff is because of that, right? I think they're going to now focus on getting this staff together. And I think you're going to see this staff really materialize here in the next couple weeks. I would be personally pretty surprised. Again, just my 2 cents. If this staff isn't complete or just maybe one off from being complete by Memorial Day, I really would be surprised on that front. Now, names wise, obviously, I think Ben McCollum is going to be involved in this until the staff is completely full, or you get an official statement from Ben McCollum saying, hey, I'm not coming to Texas Tech, right? That's how I feel about it. Okay. And that's kind of how everybody I've talked to has felt about it as well. Do I think he comes to Texas Tech? Personally, no, I don't. But it is possible. Okay. And so I think you're going to see some names starting to swirl around when it comes to coaches, maybe some in DFW. I've heard some names thrown out, but I don't even want to throw them out because it was off the record type stuff that I don't even think has any traction. I think they were just speculating, right? So it's not fair to even bring those names up to you guys. But I do think when it's all said and done, the best move for Texas Tech right now would be to go get a coach that has DFW ties, strong DFW ties in recruiting. And if not DFW, Houston, because those are two of the biggest markets when it comes to prep basketball, not only in the state, they are the two biggest in the state, but arguably in the country as well. Those are huge markets, and you need to have that in your own state. Okay. So that's one thing I'm looking for in terms of where do they go get these coaches. And I think it starts picking up a little bit of steam here in the not too distant future. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing about it as soon as this weekend, now that the dead period has officially started. This from Nick, feelings on walk-ons. Hey, there's 2 spots available. I'm all about it. Give somebody a shot, man. I remember a funny story about walk-ons. When I was at Tech, Matt Temple, I'm sure everybody remembers him, 6'10", Greek guy in terms of he was playing Greek basketball and everything for his fraternity. Well, we played him one night, and I don't know if it was his career high in an intramural game, but it might as well have been. I'm not shitting you guys. He scored 50 on us. Like, I was getting switched onto him. I'm 5'8". Like, what the hell are they expecting me to do? You know? There's only one thing on the basketball court I provide, and that is a living body. That is it. I provide a living body. I can shoot a little bit, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm all about walk-ons, man. I don't think that that's the main focus right now. From everything I've heard, obviously there could be stuff going on behind the scenes, but I think that'll be more of a priority here around the summertime and everything like that. This from Nolan. Any word on the kid out of Vegas, Osiris Grady? Yeah, he's not going to come to Tech. That offer he had from Tech was from the old staff. I would be unequivocally shocked if he came to Texas Tech. Yeah, that offer came from Mark Adams and everything like that. I don't even think West Virginia has talked to him. If I had to guess, I bet you he ends up at Utah Valley State. So don't be surprised if that happens, and don't start that slander of, McCaslin lost a recruiting battle to Utah Valley. It's like, no, dude, I don't think he's ever been in contact with the guy. I think that that's just one of the bigger name offers that he has from a couple of years ago and everything like that. I don't think Texas Tech, this new staff, has talked to him from everything I've heard, at least the people closer to the program that have talked to me about it. I was pretty surprised to see he had Tech in his Final Four personally. Maybe something changes here in the next couple of weeks, but I think if you ask me right now, he probably ends up at Utah Valley when it comes down to it. This from C Shiner 21. So is Kashad Johnson not visiting Tech at all? I see he still has Tech in his top 5. Nothing official right now. It's been moved once. As I mentioned earlier, he got moved. He was supposed to come to Texas Tech earlier this week. I believe he was supposed to actually be in Lubbock Monday and Tuesday. That did not happen. Instead, he went to Arizona. That leaked into the week. Left Tucson on Tuesday. I think he flew back home to California. And then he headed out to Lexington, where he is currently on an official visit there in Lexington with Coach Calipari and everybody for the Kentucky Wildcats. Man, the guy liked Wildcats. Interesting. But no, I haven't seen anything in terms of him officially visiting or anything along those lines. In fact, I'd be pretty surprised if he does at this point from everything I've heard on the situation. That boy D, any word about Demarion Williams and Kerwin Walton? Yeah, I think that they stay at Texas Tech as it stands right now. Both would need waivers, and Tech has to honor the scholarship. So I think they play better in this Grant McCaslin offense anyway. So I think they probably stay at Texas Tech, and if not, they better be hitting the portal pretty soon. Because again, you're going to need a waiver and everything if you're those guys in terms of Demarion Williams and Kerwin Walton. I think Kerwin Walton actually probably plays a little bit better next year for Texas Tech. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video, share it on social media. Really appreciate y'all hanging out with me, talking Tech sports, keeping the chat alive and rolling. Drop those questions in there. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. It doesn't even have to be about Texas Tech men's basketball. It can be about what am I eating later for dinner? It'll be chicken strips, by the way, because fiance is not here. So I'm going to make some chicken strips. Duh. Spicy chicken strips. Shout out to Costco. Have a couple beers as well while we're at it. And hashtag Go Stars. Might even walk over to the arena and get last second tickets for that. Who knows? The night's young, right? Let's go to Greg. Anything on that big that was at North Texas? Yeah, he committed to Xavier, I believe, a couple weeks ago, or maybe a week ago. But yeah, he's going to Xavier. Do you think McCaslin set unrealistic expectations by mentioning winning a natty? This roster isn't close to the level as is. That from Matt. I don't think he set unrealistic expectations. I think you have to decipher that for what it truly means. He doesn't mean right away. It's a process, right? Like, I mean, for example, Beard said the same thing, right? They got there. It just took them a little while. Do I think that McCaslin does the same exact thing as Beard? I mean, if we're, talking odds-wise, no. I mean, the odds are not in that favor. But I think realistically, when he was talking about that, mentioning winning a natty is what you're supposed to do. Like, I get it's coach speak and everything like that. But I can promise you this, Grant McCaslin has the highest expectations of anyone in that program. Funny enough, I'm from Irving. He's from Irving. And my grandma, from how I understand it, knew his family back in the day. I don't know the ties or anything. But yeah, he grew up in the same neighborhood as me. And I remember my grandma talking about his parents and whatnot and everything. And that's a driven family, man. And Grant, you can see it. He's one of those guys that's very to himself, tries to stay even keel. I think that's another thing that's interesting about him is I don't know how to word this properly other than the fact to say he's not Joey McGuire. Like, I think that rubs people the wrong way. Like, people want to see him more on social media, and I just don't think that's who he is. So I think that when it comes to the expectations of a natty, he has those, and he's serious about it, but it's going to take time. And I think eventually Texas Tech will be in the conversation to competing for Big 12 titles under Grant McCaslin. Will it happen in year one? If I'm being honest, probably not. But I do think that he can build something and build upon what Tech has in terms of the facilities, the fan base, and the marketability when it comes to NIL and just how invested the city of Lubbock and Texas Tech alumni are in that program. So I think that you're right, Matt. This roster isn't close to that level as is. You're 100% right. There's no debating that. And if somebody tells you that this is a top 5 roster in the Big 12, they're lying to you, or they got beer goggles on for Texas Tech, right? But I do like the fact that he was able to keep Pop. He was able to keep Lamar. He was able to keep Lindsey. He was able to keep RJ, right? Like, outside of Tyson, those were the young pieces that a lot of Tech fans didn't want to see go, right? And he kept those guys. And I think that says a lot about the culture that he's trying to build at Texas Tech, first and foremost, in a long way in terms of him actually trying to keep it up and invest in those guys. Now, he does it differently for every one of those guys, but I think that's telling in terms of keeping those guys there. Now, when it's all said and done, got to fucking win, right? Like, simple and plain. That's really what it comes down to. This from Greg. I know McCaslin has Power 5 experience coaching, but not as a head coach. Just feels a bit underwhelming on the coaching staff so far. Totally understand that. I really do. It's funny. I was actually talking to one of my Tech buddies about that yesterday, where he's one of the biggest fans I know. And it's so interesting for me to talk to my friends because it's hard for me to turn off the media side of my brain and just like kick into actually like being a fan sometimes. But he was talking to me and I had my media brain on at that point. And he was like, "Are you not overwhelmed by this staff?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think that he kind of did it backwards. If you ask me, I'll tell anybody that listens. And again, this is my opinion. What the hell do I know, right? Like I have just covered Texas Tech. I've never played at the collegiate level, let alone been a coach, right? But just from an outsider that has covered college basketball now for going on goddamn 7 years. I am old as shit, people. At least I'm getting there. I would have done it in the sense of get on campus, keep guys that you want to keep, whether that's Pop, RJ, prioritize those guys. And before you enter the portal and put feelers out, go get your staff together, right? Because I think it's smarter to have 6 guys going after recruits and maybe have possible ties to bigger fish in the portal C than just 3 guys going after it and doing a 6-person job, right? Like that's my mindset. It's too late. It doesn't matter anymore, right? But I wholeheartedly understand how people feel underwhelmed by what's going on right now. And I do think that his lack of, I guess, showing face on social media outside of a post here or there, I think he's posted more in the past like 48 hours because he threw out the first pitch at the Texas Tech baseball game than he had in the previous time that he had been the Texas Tech head coach. At least it's close, right? And I think that rubs people the wrong way. It is what it is. But yeah, I understand wholeheartedly the aspect of why the hell is there not a full staff? I asked that question too. But I do think that will change, and I think it'll change relatively quickly here in the next coming weeks. Now the dead period has started when it comes to recruiting and going out on the road. This from Justin. I know I mentioned this in another video and probably stand mostly alone, but I really do like Walton and what he could be under Grant. I wouldn't get my expectations or hopes up too high, but I do think that I think he will be used better. Because again, and I think Justin, you may have been the one that mentioned this to me, but Grant doesn't switch everything defensively like Mark did. And I think that's a plus for Walton because if he's switching everything, he's a liability sometimes defensively, especially when he gets switched onto a big. And that's what teams were doing last year. They were either getting him onto a big or getting him onto a guard that had quicker feet than him, and it was biting him in the you-know-what, right? But I think Grant can do a better job of scheming guys like him because I think Walton, from an offensive standpoint, is one of those guys that isn't going to be a quote-unquote difference maker, but I think he fits well playing alongside really any guard you want as the primary ball handler at that point. In terms of, hey, I think with Pop, he's good at being in the corner in his spot, ready for a catch and shoot, let it fly. He's a really good catch and shoot shooter, Kerwin Walton is. He shot, I believe, upwards of 43% off catch and shoots. I'd have to go look at the numbers again, but that's the number that's popping in my mind. He's a good catch and shoot guy, right? And so I think he brings value. Now, I do think that there is aspects to his game that have to improve, but I think they could be hidden a little bit more when it comes down to the Grant McCaslin defensive scheme. Again, like the video if you haven't already. We're going to talk a little bit more here about the roster and as it stands right now. Answer y'all's questions. We'll go till 6 o'clock. How does that sound for everybody? 1 hour live? I think that's more than fair on this Thursday night. Again, like the video, share it on social media. Again, I'll retweet you. Just ask Brandon and Greg. I retweeted them. Just gotta tag me on social media at RCMB323. All right, let's get into Dizzy here. He was adding Justin. I really like the thought of Walton coming back also. There you go. Just saying he's a better fit in the Grant McCaslin system. That's what we were just talking about. Old Texas Tech, man, Lady Raiders are kicking butt in recruiting. I'm not even going to say pardon my language. Fuck yeah, they are. Coach Gerlich is amazing. She's awesome. I remember going and watching them, and this will lead into the Jazz Gardner discussion here in just a second. But I got the privilege to go watch them practice for 2 days straight, and was cool with what I saw from the guys. It was kind of what I expected. Obviously, injuries and various things impacted their season. But from the Lady Raiders perspective, when I was watching practice over there, I remember talking to some of the coaches, and I was just like, damn, they're young, but you can see it, right? Like, it was one of those deals where it's like, I remember talking to them, hey, they asked me for my opinion on the roster, which, again, take it with a grain of salt, you know? But I was like, I see it. I can see y'all's vision. I don't know if y'all make the tournament this year, but I can promise you this: if you're continuing on the trajectory that you are in terms of developing these girls from the standpoint of elevating their game once they get on campus, and don't get it twisted, they have done that. Perfect example is Breamber Scott. Breamber Scott was good before she came to Tech, but she elevated it. Bryn Gerlich as well elevated her game, right? Numerous girls have done that. And the crazy part is this about the Lady Raiders, and we'll transition here in just a second. They got a 5-star commit, 2 girls from UTEP. They didn't even have their best recruit last year play for them 1 second, not even one. It was the best JUCO player in the country committed last year. She had some health issues, lost a little bit of weight. They decided to redshirt her, make sure she was fine. She will be the starting center for Texas Tech this year in the Lady Raiders. And I'll go out on a limb and say it right now. I don't know how much of a hot take it is, but I think Texas Tech is going to make the NCAA tournament for the first time in a long time for the Lady Raiders. And Coach Gerlich is absolutely stunting on these hoes when it comes to the fashion sense. Those boots were made for walking, and you can see them from New York with how many friggin' rhinestones there are on them. My God, they are not very many people can pull that shit off. I'll tell you that much, but Coach Gerlich can. She's an absolute dog. But on the Jazz Gardner front, yeah, Tech isn't going to get him. That was a previous staff recruit. Remember meeting his family while I was out there for the Houston game. Really good people, but they were more invested with Al Pinkins and Corey Williams. So those were the 2 key recruiters for Jazz for Texas Tech. And obviously they are no longer with the Red Raiders. Al at Ole Miss, and then Corey with Auburn and Bruce Pearl. This from Justin. Don't get me started on switching everything. Watching Pop end up in the paint and AMAC on the perimeter nearly made me break my TV. I wouldn't break my TV for that, but I was frustrated. No doubt about it. Maybe a couple stronger sips, if you know what I mean. Let's see. This from a Big Bing fan as well. A couple years ago, I suggested that Mark Adams hired David Peavy, Duncanville's successful coach. But like you said, McCaslin needs a DW successful coach on staff. It won't be Peavy. I can tell you that much. I believe he retired. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that in the chat, but I believe he retired. So I think when it comes down to it, that's the most interesting aspect of this staff in its search to see who are the 2 high-level assistants and then the 3 lower level, okay? So how that works right now is Matt and AC are higher level because there's only 3 of them. So that means they can go out on the road and recruit. Now, when they hire other guys, they'll probably switch AC down to a lower level. I don't know about Matt. I would assume he's going to be like the highest low-level assistant you have. And by no means is low supposed to be like a bad thing here. It's just there's tiers to it. I'm very interested because, again, they need to target Dallas-Fort Worth. They need to target Houston and get guys that are very instrumental in the AAU ranks. Like it or not, it's where the talent is, right? Like guys that are affiliated with good programs in those 2 cities in the surrounding areas, because that's where the talent is in the state. And if you can keep, let's face it, if Texas Tech had a roster full of just Texas guys, they could compete at the highest level, period, end of story, right? Like, I mean, I believe I saw a stat out of the top 50 players in this past year's class. I believe, do not quote me on this, 11 were from the state of Texas. May have even been more. Obviously, those rankings switch up and down and everything, and depending on what site you're looking at. But yeah, there's a ton of talent here, and you got to keep some of that and keep it in, and make it go to West Texas, right? So I think that's a point of emphasis for me. When it comes down to it, is get a guy that really can recruit those 2 areas or has a lot of ties to one of those 2 areas. Joseph Duncan, great discussion. Appreciate you watching, Duncan. Greg, thanks for the retweet. Appreciate that. Matt, Level of concern if we miss the dance 2 years in a row and start losing momentum the program built over the past 5 years. I'll say this, if it was Mark Adams as the head coach and you don't go to the dance 2 years in a row, it'd be very high, right? But Grant McCaslin in his first year at a new job, it's hard to win. Simple and plain. Doesn't matter who you are. Sometimes there's anomalies. It is what it is. But especially those those low major guys going to a high major, I guess the mid major guys, if you consider Grant McCaslin that, and that's exactly what he is. From mid major to high major, right? Grant has won everywhere he's gone. What does that look like at Texas Tech in year one? I don't know. Let me see the roster first and the coaching staff. But I wouldn't be entirely concerned. I would start getting concerned if you see Texas Tech not recruiting well. That's what I would say in terms of not this cycle, but the next cycle. That's what I would start getting concerned about. And not just in the high school ranks, but in the next portal cycle as well. Like if they don't land a dude or two, I'm concerned about that, So that's kind of where I'm at on that front. This from Judah. Damn, SEC got to steal all the Texas Tech coaches. Yeah. Well, I don't think Tech did themselves any favor on that front, specifically the head coach that was here at Texas Tech. This from Greg. Anyone else that interests you that are possibly coming to Tech from the portal? Not just what you have heard, but who you think would be good. I mean, if you're telling me right now I could have my pick of guys in the portal right now that I think would be the best fit for Texas Tech that maybe aren't realistic for them, is one of the guys that I mentioned earlier, and it's Ernest Uda Jr., the former McDonald's All-American, Kansas transfer, just entered the portal today. He would be absolutely perfect in a Grant McCaslin system. He's a really good pick and roll guy, big body, finishes a screen, creates space for the primary ball handler on the pick and roll, where they can shoot it, go to the rim, whatever it is. He's an elite runner towards the rim, good lob threat, defensive presence, 6'10". The guy that I think would be a really big, impactful, right away, plug-and-play center for Texas Tech, right from the jump. That's what he is. Do I think Texas Tech gets him? No, I don't. I think he probably goes closer to home. But the two guys that I think would just be perfect is him, and then Zuby Ejiofor, another Kansas big. And that one I think is a little bit more realistic. And this is just trying to put the pieces together, right? In terms of, hey, he's from Garland. He's 6'8". He's a forward. Maybe he wants to come back closer to home. He's an athletic big. He can play 1 through 5, or he can guard 1 through 5, excuse me. Good in transition, former 4-star recruit from the class of 2022. Think he would be an instant plug-and-play guy as well. Now, has Tech reached out to these guys? I haven't heard anything, but to be honest, they just entered the portal today, so I'm sure we'll hear more in the next couple of days. But those are the two guys that I think Texas Tech, and I'll talk more about Zuby tomorrow in the video with a little bit more of a scouting report on him, because I do think Texas Tech has a chance to bring him to Lubbock. It would no doubt be difficult and probably have some NIL involved. But there's a chance there because of that Texas connection. And if he indeed does want to come back to the Lone Star State. Let's talk about the roster real quick. Y'all can get y'all's final questions in. We got about 7 minutes. Like the video if you haven't already. Leave a shout out in the chat, anything y'all want to be read. And I'll get to it before I head out of here. But this is how the roster stands currently for Texas Tech. On the team site, these are the guys listed as of this morning. Okay. Pop Isaacs, Lindsey, Robert Jennings, Kerwin Walton, Damarion Williams, Lamar Washington. Players expected to come to Tech or who have already signed their NLIs. You got Chance McMillan from the portal, Darion Williams from the portal. Then you've got Drew Steffi as well as Jason Jackson. Again, that Jason Jackson situation is interesting. From everything I've heard right now, it sounds like it's headed in the direction that he's coming to Texas Tech. Can that change? Can he get out of his national letter of intent? Sure, if Texas Tech allows it. But I'm not sure that Jason Jackson would end up at another high major school at this point in the cycle with how many spots are already taken up, right? So I think that there's stuff when it comes to that front as well. But again, when it comes down to it for me, I think that the biggest things Texas Tech needs when looking at that roster, you have to fill the remaining 3 scholarships, right? Again, you have 3 left out of those names I mentioned: Isaacs, Lindsey, Jennings, Walton, the 2 Williams, Washington, McCaslin, Jackson, and Steffi. You have 3 scholarships left in that whole thing. If Jackson does indeed come to the 806, right? You'd have 4 if he didn't, obviously. You need to go get 2 wings and a big, whatever it may be. Combination 2 bigs, 1 wing. You need to prioritize wings and bigs. You got enough guards. I love the trio of Pop Isaacs, Lamar Washington, and Chance McCaslin. I love that trio, right? Like, I think that is a firm foundation for Texas Tech offensively and also defensively, okay? But when it comes down to it, I think every team is looking at this right now, and it's like, well, we're just going to take Pop Isaacs away from them and see what the hell they do, right? And I don't blame the team at all. You got to go out and get another impact guy or 2, if possible, in the portal, and then go from there. Also, if you want more live videos, let me know in the chat. Just say live. Say the word live in there, because I'm debating on doing this maybe twice a week from here on out, but I'm debating it. Need some reassurance, if we're being honest. Let's see. This from Big Bing fan. He got into recruiting trouble, I believe, and was forced out or retired. Oh, talk about PV. And there was a weird situation with a girl, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to get into that man's love life or anything like that. That's not me. This from Kevin. Kirby not making Grant leave ASAP is killing us, especially in recruiting. How many has Grant reached out to? Why didn't anyone follow him? Why? Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you, Kevin. I get the standpoint of Grant wanting to stay to win an NIT, championship. I get it. And truthfully, I don't know how much of a difference it would have made if he left UNT and gave Texas Tech another, what was that, 12 days, I think? Maybe it makes a big difference. I think really where it makes a big difference, if you ask me, Kevin, is the coaching staff. And now a lot of people have been asking, why didn't recruits follow him? Why didn't some of the coaching staff follow him, or more of it follow him? First and foremost, 2 did. So Matt and AC, Choki, they both followed him. From the player standpoint, I mean, it's one of those deals. The center, there was something there behind the scenes. Remember, he didn't play except for one of the NIT games left, and everything like that. The program, or there was a mutual decision on that front. Once Pop committed to Texas Tech to stay back and play for another year, personally, I didn't see the appeal of Tyler Perry. It just wouldn't have made much sense to me to have those 2 small guys playing next to each other in such a physical league. Not to say that they aren't physical players, but I think it just would have been really, really difficult from a lot of perspectives. So from a player perspective, outside of Scott, that's the guy that was really interesting to me at UNT. He didn't even enter the portal. He stayed. And so you got to remember, who took over for Grant McCaslin at UNT? It was Ross Hodge. Ross Hodge was his lead assistant. It makes sense for guys to stay back. They have relationships with those guys. And maybe, too, Grant didn't think some of those guys were worthy of making that jump to the best conference in America. And that's just, hey, you can love a guy, but you got to put that to the side when you're evaluating a player, So I get the perspective of, like, the head-scratching aspect of, like, why did nobody follow him? But 2 coaches did. And you were in the Final Four for one of those players. But it was always going to be Florida or Kansas State from how I understood it. Obviously, he ends up at Kansas State. But I think that's the real big reason why, if you ask me, when it comes down to it. Those are the reasons. Greg, thanks for the live, RC. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Appreciate y'all putting live in the chat. Again, if you want more live videos, put live in the chat. I promise I'll see them. Don, who on the current team is getting NIL money and how much is left to give out? I'm not going to lie to you, Don. I have no idea how much is left. That is not me. I am not a donor. And I don't know how the collectives work in terms of, like, the nitty gritty, right? I don't know that. But I will say this. I would say a vast majority of the guys on the team are getting NIL right now. I don't know the number. That's not up to me. But I do know that NIL is a large part of it right now, and it would not be surprising at all if everybody's getting it or everybody except for 1 and 2. You know what I mean? But that's not on me to say how much is left to give out. I don't think it's fair to even speculate on that end, not my business. Kevin, how long do fans stay with current situation? Being honest, I know you need to spin it. Sadly, I think North Texas. What? I'm confused by that. How long do fans stay with current situation in terms of like staying even keel or not getting frustrated, or just a little bit more clarity there, Kevin, from that front? A little confused on your question. Sorry. Appreciate that, Joseph. Appreciate that, old Texas Tech man. Again, I'm going to get out of here in just a couple of seconds, but appreciate y'all tuning in. It really means a lot to me that y'all, for some reason, love enjoying talking to me or chatting with me. It really does mean a lot. I don't take it for granted. I know that time is a valuable thing, and I appreciate each and every one of y'all spending some time with me and talking Texas Tech hoop. For everybody that was in the chat, really, really appreciate that. Like the video if you haven't already. It's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. I'll answer these questions really quickly. This from Mr. Jeff. Great seeing you live. RC, thanks. More lives, especially at this time. Perfect for me. Have a great weekend. There you go. Invite us to the wedding, bro. It's too small for that. I ain't gonna lie to you, homie. I think there's like 50 people going. Yeah. No, there's no room. Drop merch. Pay attention in June, July, Dizzy. We might got something for you from Justin. Hopefully next live has some fun new additions to talk about. That would be fantastic. Trust me, I would love it. And then we'll round it out with Kevin and his question. And Gerald, appreciate you tuning in. There we go. Let's see. There it is. Sorry. Tech letting him stay at North Texas showed weakness. I don't know if it showed weakness. I think it showed understanding, if that makes sense. And do I agree with the understanding in today's climate of college basketball? Maybe not completely, but I do understand the standpoint of, hey, Grant McCaslin wanted to start what he finished in terms of being the coach there. But I also understand the perspective of, hey, like, you've accepted this job. We got to get this thing rolling, bro. This is high major, a lot of money on the line basketball. So I definitely get the perspective for sure from that side of things, but also I understand Grant's point of view. Hey, I want to finish this out with my team. What kind of leader would I be if I left these guys high and dry at the most important part of our season? You know what I mean? That really is what it is. Hey, Michael, I addressed that question for you about 20 minutes into the live, so go back and check it out there. I'm RC Maxfield. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Y'all have let me know. I will be doing more lives from now on. The fiance may not like it, but we'll make it happen, Captain. Appreciate each and every one of y'all tuning in to the live show here. And if some news breaks, y'all know where to go. Of course, I'm talking the Back to 12 podcast channel.